my A-level computer science project, and I'm recording this video for my evaluation documentation. So if I run the game, you can see the game is opened without any issues. If I hover over the buttons, they're active, they work. If I click on random points, nothing happens. If I click on the start, you can see different levels and the multiplayer. We got AI modes here, we got multiplayer. If I go back to menu, got beginner's guide and buttons here. So if I click on pawn, we can see the movement patterns for pawn, letting the user to play with the piece they want to get familiar with. So we have bishop moving, but we saw something. The pawn doesn't get promoted in this beginner's guide when it reaches the endpoint. And also we got queen, and knight, and king, sorry, and we've got knight. So if I start the multiplayer mode, as we can see, we got the pieces, white pieces, black pieces. So if I click on white pieces, we can see the movement patterns. As we know, bishop and king and queen, they don't have any movement patterns yet because they're just blocked. However, knight has 2 movement patterns, so we can choose and select and see the movement patterns for white pieces. We can't select any black pieces because it's white's turn to move. So I can move a pawn, and also now it is black's turn to move. As we can see, the movement patterns are being shown correctly, and black pawn is moving down, white pawn is moving up, so we can move black pawn. And as we can see, it's white's turn now, and we can't click and move any black pieces. If I click on white pawn, for example, and if I click here, we can see the pattern disappears because we can't move the pawn anymore. So if I click again and click here and click back here again, I can't move it because I haven't selected this pawn and just unselected it. So, and if I click outside of the board, nothing happens, and I still can't move the pawn. And again, for black pieces, we can't move a black piece for illegal moves. We can only move this piece on the squares shown. As you can see, we can't move it. And as we can see, if I choose the pawn, the only movement patterns shown are here, and I can't move the knight outside of the page. I'm not allowed. Same for this one, and same for king. I can't move it outside of the board. So if I move the black pawn, a black knight here, and I move a white pawn, and then black knight, then white. As we can see, I can't move the black knight outside of the page on the left edge. Same for the white knight. Can't move the white knight outside of the page. The only movements allowed are inside the page. So the movement patterns won't go out of the board. The movement patterns that are inside the page are being shown. And also if I move a white knight, here, I can't move the knight outside of the page here either. Now if I pause the game, as we can see the buttons here are active, and if I click on pause, you can see the game is paused, and if I just click here randomly and I press P, go back to the game, and as we can see nothing has changed, the game is as it was. And if I press P now in the middle of the game, nothing happens. Still it's white's turn to move, as you can see. So if I move a white piece, it's black's turn to move. If I pause the game, return, and still it's black's turn to move. And if I click on menu, you can see go back to the main menu. If I start another game, as you can see the game starts again and we have a new game. So still white's turn to move, black pieces can't move. And if I try to perform 2 consecutive moves, there's no chance I can't do it, because now it's black's turn to move. Now let's see if we can highlight enemy pieces. So it's white's turn to move, and as you can see we have a black pawn here, and it's been highlighted because the white pawn can attack. If we try another piece, if I bring that piece here, you can see this piece is being highlighted because the knight could just eliminate. And as we can see the stack is working now. Once a black pawn is being attacked, it will be added to the stack at the left hand side. So if we try for the black pieces could attack as well. We have pieces being highlighted for black pieces, and we have a white pawn being added here, and we can't do anything with them because they're just pictures. So now it's white's turn, black again, white, and if I keep doing these, as you can see the stack is moving, the stack is working alright. And if I click here, come here, and as we can see if I click on a random piece, those disappear and I can't move the piece, but can eliminate. And if I pause the game now and click here again, nothing should happen, and return back, as we can see the stacks are still here and it's black's turn to move. So yeah, it doesn't, if we pause the game, stacks are being drawn again, so everything is fine. And if I go to the menu, start multiplayer, as we can see the stacks are the stacks just disappeared as the game is new. And now we try to see if we could limit the movement of any pieces. So if I bring the white bishop here, as we can see now it's black's turn to move, but I can't move the black pawn, but I can move other black pawns and other black pieces, because if I move this black pawn, the black king will be in check by this white bishop, so the movement of this piece has been limited. Now if I try this for white pieces, as you can see this black pawn cannot move because same case scenario we have here, but other white pieces can definitely move. And now if I try to put a king in check, as you can see the king is being highlighted by red, And if I try to attack the king by this white bishop, I can't, because we shouldn't be able to attack a king. But as we can see, other black pieces cannot move, but as we can see, this black bishop can eliminate this bishop, and black knight can eliminate this bishop, but other pieces cannot move because movements of them won't save the king. And also the king can eliminate this bishop as well to save itself. And if I try this for, so if I move the knight here, and if I move the queen here, and we can see white king is being checked, and white pieces cannot move here, but this knight could save the king. Only the movements that save the king are allowed. Other movements are being blocked. Now if I put the black king in check, and if I pause the game to check whether the game is still, yeah, as we can see, the king is in check still. It's black's turn to move. So if I pause the game again, yes, and we can see here the black bishop cannot move here because it doesn't save the king, but it can move here to save the king. And if I try to do the same thing for white, check, if I unpause the game, it's white's turn to move, and still the king is in check. And now if I try to make a checkmate case scenario, if I bring the bishop here, and now if I bring my queen here, that's checkmate, because there's no movement that could save the black king, and the game is in checkmate. If we pause the game is still in checkmate. Black pieces cannot move, no pieces could move, because the game is finished and the only option is leaving the game, and the game starts again. And if I try doing the checkmate for white, and checkmate for white, and no pieces could move. If I pause the game, still in checkmate, no pieces could move because the game is finished. Go back. Now if I try to check the pawn exchange interface, bring this, so I'm bringing this white pawn to the end, and as we can see we have the pawn exchange interface. If I try to close it, I can't close it because I have to exchange the pawn. I'm not allowed to continue the game. So now, oh, what happened? Bring it back. So if I try to move any pieces here, I can't because the game is stopped until the pawn is exchanged. So if I try to change the white pawn to queen. As you can see, it works here, and it's black's turn to move, so bring the pawn, and it's black's turn now. So if I try rook, let's go for knight, and as we can see, as the knight comes, it puts the king in check, so it's working properly. And I bring the king back and check again, so it works alright. Oh yeah, the king is in check by queen. So if I try another pieces for the pawn exchange, if I try rook, yeah, as we can see, it puts the black king in check, eliminated, and then white's turn to move, check. Okay. And if we try bishop, as we can see, bishop is here, and if I move these, as you can see, it's working normally. Now if I move back to try AI mood, try and check if the features we had in multiplayer work for AI. So we got two AI moods, level 1, level 2. So if we go for level 1, as you can see, the AI moves without any issues. If I bring back, as we can see, we cannot see any illegal movements from the AI. AI moves pieces depending on the correct movement patterns of that piece. So as we can see here, we can choose white pieces, and we got movement patterns. Still, we can't move any pieces outside of the page. We could correctly choose select the pieces, and we can't perform any illegal moves. And also we can't choose any black pieces, and buttons are active. If I pause the game, random clicks, if I return back, still white's turn to move. So if I bring this here, and as we can see, we have a capture here with the AI, and the white knight is being placed in the correct stack. So if I continue the game, I'm letting the AI to bring the pawn to the end of the page to see if it can exchange the pawn. As we can see, the black pawn captures the white rook, and we have a new queen here for the AI. So let's see if it works. Yeah, we have a capture. It could move the queen. So if I bring the queen here, it captures. If I bring here, yeah, it works okay. So if I pause the game, nothing happens, everything is alright. And now let's try to see if the AI could do any captures or any check or checkmates. So I'm just letting the AI to put me in checkmate if it can. check, another check, and checkmate. So as we can see, the AI is allowed to perform checkmates, and I can't do anything here because the white bishop cannot perform any movements now because it is in checkmate. So if I pause the game and go back, we can see stacks still here and the game still in checkmate, and I should go back to the menu. And if I try to see how the AI starts the game every time, as we can see, if I go back again, come here and then start, as we can see, the AI just moves the right pawn here every time. So if I bring the knight here, still the same movement. If I perform another move, still the right pawn. So the AI just performs the same movement every time. So if I go to level 2 and check the level 2, you can see the AI plays with the pawn and it brings the knights forward, which is really good. Trying to develop key pieces. And as we can see, the AI could capture here, but it doesn't, because if the knight comes here, it will be captured by my white queen. So the AI has good priorities, and as we can see, if I brought my white pawn forward and the AI realized that if it doesn't return its black knight, I would capture it. And as we can see, the AI responds in a reasonable time. It doesn't take ages for the AI to respond, and as we can see, I can capture AI's pieces. Uncheck, capture, check, and checkmate. So we can see AI level 2 could perform checkmate as well. We have checkmate here. I can't move my king. Yep. And if I just go to the beginner's guide, as we can see, still works. If I return to the game, starts again, fresh game. And if I click on exit, the game is closed. So I'm just going to try and put the AI in check or checkmate to see if it works for the AI mode. So I just try my best to put the AI in checkmate. and checkmate. So the user could put the AI in checkmate. So as we can see, if the king moves here, still in check, and if the AI moves here, in check by the white bishop. If I pause the game, still cannot move any pieces, can't click and move any black pieces or white pieces. And so as we saw, the checkmate feature works for AI levels as well, so for AI modes as well. So if I exit the game is closed. Now we need to check something in our pawn exchange interface. So if I bring the pawn to the end, if I bring the pawn exchange interface here and try to pause the game or go back to the menu, as we can see, we can't do this because it's not allowed. The user should choose the piece that should be exchanged with the pawn, and then they're allowed to pause the game or go to the menu. This is just a quick test for the beginner's guide and for showing that the rook movements work. As you can see, the rook works alright. There's no problem with rook. Checkmate immediately. Yep. I was just going to show the rook movements work. Wow, okay.